Hi, it's Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on how to paint scroll work. Now this is a bit of freehand using an Army Painter Wargamer character brush, and all we're going to be using is a little bit of Carroburg crimson and a little bit of black to paint the scroll work on the scrolls of Saint Celestine. We're also going to do how to colour the scrolls in a quick and easy method, so let's crack on with that. Okay, so the first colour that we're going to use is Citadel Rakarth Flesh. I'm going to use this to give a base colour to all these big scrolls here. Now while you're painting these up, it's good to give it a nice smooth coat, because this will be the base for the parchment kind of colour that you're aiming for. So if you put one layer on and it doesn't quite cover it, just give it another smooth layer and hopefully that'll sort it out. Next up, we're going to be giving it a shade with Seraphim Sepia. So you want to be getting this all over it, making sure that you get it in the ridges, any little creases and around the fleur-de-lis at the top there. Now if you do get the Seraphim Sepia pooling, if it's in a particularly dark spot where there would be a lot of shade, it's not too bad. But if it's on any of the outer edges and it looks quite bad, just make sure you smooth that over so you don't have too much of a pool of that to dry. Now we're going to be using Rakarth Flesh again. We're just going to reapply this, leaving shading. Now you haven't got that much recesses on the scrolls, so where it goes a little bit concave on the scroll, or there's a slight edge or a slight ridge, you want to be leaving a little bit of the shade showing on the lower side of that, or the side which isn't going to be catching as much light. A bit of a view of what's coming next. Now we're going to add a little bit of white to the Rakarth Flesh. We're now going to highlight the areas that we've just coloured. So you want to be doing the upper sides that are going to be catching more light with this highlight. So thinking about where it's going to be shaded and that, and then highlighting the other areas. And then we're going to do one final highlight by mixing a little bit more white to the previous mix. We're just going to do one final little highlight on those areas that we've previously highlighted. I'll just keep on doing these highlights, and once done we can start on the actual patterns and the scrolls themselves. I'm going to use Vallejo Black here. Any black will do. If you mix a tiny little spot of water with it, just so it's a bit thinner than usual, this stops it drying on your brush while you're trying to do the work. What you want to be aiming for is when you're dragging the brush, you always want to drag it away from the point in a straight line. Never drag the brush point side to side, because it will spread it out. You're always dragging the brush away from the point. As you can see there, where I've been pushing down with the point, you can see that the line goes thicker. So if you want the really fine lines, you always drag it down. Now when you look at the fleur-de-lis here, you can see that it's quite uneven, but what you're doing is when you put them on, that's just the basic outline of it, and you want to be thickening them up. Then once you've got the basic shape done, you can go back and tweak it using little bits of either the Rakarth Flesh mix or just a normal piece of Rakarth Flesh, because when it's in between and dead close to the black outlines, it doesn't look too bad at all. So you can see there's a little bit of black gone over the line in between, so I'm getting a little bit of Rakarth Flesh there. You're just tweaking that by going downwards with it and then straight back onto the black. Now if you finish it and you're not too happy with it, just try and touch it up using a bit of Rakarth Flesh. Try not to keep going over and over it, because you'll find that if you're touching it up, you're still using that kind of gentle, thin brush strokes that will help with the freehand, even if you're just adding a little bit of the Rakarth flesh to cover up a mistake that's been made. And when you're doing these little boxes, again, the same again, you do want to just drag the brush downwards to get those thin lines. You can see that one of the lines is quite thick there. And then you can start doing what will be the text on the scroll itself. Now again, when you're going side to side here, because the brush is almost 90 degrees to the parchment, so dragging that side to side when it's like that, you are dragging it away from the point, which is fine. And then the areas where I didn't do that and you've got quite the thick lines, you can go back with a little bit of Rakarth flesh and just touch that up so that you haven't got quite as much of the thickness there. So we'll be doing a little bit more scroll work with the black, but we're going to go on to a little bit of Carroburg crimson in a moment and show you what you can do with that. It does take a lot of time, so if you rush it, it will smudge more, but if you take your time with it, then you can get some really nice effects. It's also really good for practicing giving freehand. So here we go with the Carroburg crimson, using exactly the same technique as we did on the black. You're just going to be going outlining around the fleur-de-lis and also be doing some text and some patterns as well. What I tend to find is useful for when you're doing freehand, you're trying to do the fine detail stuff. If you just go at it and you're breathing normally, your hand will shake more, but if you kind of take a half breath, you've probably got about 5 to 10 seconds where your hand's going to be a bit steadier, and it's worth using those just to do any of the thin areas that you want to do, or when you're practicing, just keep taking small half breaths. Obviously breathe properly in between them, just so that you can get that steady hand for when you're doing the really thin lines. As I say, you can take a lot of time doing this. This is just a really quick method, because this is just for the tabletop, but it'll get it done a lot quicker. Now this, doing the scroll work that I finished, you'll see at the end of the video, it's taken me quite a few hours to do, because there's so much of it doing both of these double-sided. So now we're going on to a new area of the scroll. What I'm doing here is, if you've ever seen Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness or Ash vs the Evil Dead, any of them, you'll have seen the Necronomicon, and I'm just out of a bit of boredom, mainly from doing the normal text, just trying something interesting and trying to do a few pages of that on the scroll on the way down. So what we're painting here is the kind of skull head that you've got with the two white eyes and the bit of the neck bones coming out the bottom, and also it's got hair poking out all the sides. So this is what I'm trying to achieve here. It doesn't turn out too bad, but you'll probably see pictures of that at the very end as well. If you do get too much of the Carroburg crimson and it pools like that, then don't worry about it too much, just use that to get the Carroburg crimson for when you're doing the rest of it, and it'll be fine. If you can't hear any noises in the background here, I've got a cat who is harassing me while I'm recording the sound. Okay, so we've got a lot more of the scroll work done here, and this is just another example, this time just speeded up, of doing the different parts of the scroll work. Now the fleur-de-lis there is still looking a bit wonky, so I may go back and alter that. Just tweak it just a little bit, because it is on the front of the scroll, so it's always visible when you're looking at the front of the model. The time will tell if I do that. Like so. And this is the finished scroll work. So this is just repeating the same process over and over and over, using different symbols and pictures and different letters in the little square text boxes. And that's that.
Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much.